And welcome to another episode of Project Flux, where we're going to look at the world of artificial intelligence in projects and productivity. We're going to specifically look at some of the big stories from the Project Flux newsletter, which landed in your inbox if you're a subscriber over the last few days. If you're not a subscriber, I thoroughly recommend that you subscribe by going to the show notes, going to the link, and you'll get all the news in AI delivered to your inbox every single Monday morning. But we're going to delve into a few of the big stories from the newsletter today. But before I do that, I just want to say hello to my co-host, Yoshi. How are you today, Yoshi?
Good, mate. We've had some technical issues the last couple of days, but I think we're finally getting through it.
We got through it. That's the important thing. We keep going. You know, no one said this tech lock was easy. And there's always challenges, and there's a lesson there for everyone. You know, even with all these AI tools, you're going to hit stumbling blocks along the way, but you have to persevere. Just like I feel like we deserve a medal on this podcast because we've got through it and we've got the technical issues all sorted out. But I think, you know, it's often the trials of using something new, right? Because you've just got yourself a brand new MacBook Pro, and probably some of the issues are with that. And whenever you buy new hardware or new software, there is an adjustment period, and sometimes it's just simple human error. I mean, just for the listeners' sake, we wasted a good half hour working out that I simply hadn't used the right browser. So it's often something as simple as that. So always assume it's human error first. It's quite a good.
And that's why you have AI.
That's why you have AI, yes. So we won't have to rely on human error. But anyway, I just want to, there's a few stories I want to go through. I don't want to spend too long on the opinion piece. People can read it if they like. But I just wanted to touch on it briefly, which is all about RAG, which stands for Retrieval Augmented Generation. And I just could you just explain for the listeners what RAG is?
Yeah, so it's kind of what it says on the tin, really. But effectively, with RAG, when you use large language models, it's trained on a certain set of training data, and that will form its knowledge base of which it gives you its outputs. Mm-hmm. Now, with RAG, what it can do is it can connect to the different sources of data, documentation, internet, and databases, and then it can provide that information with its training data to give you a much richer response.
Yeah. So it's more in context, it's more up to date, it's more fine-tuned effectively.
Effectively, yeah, exactly, more fine-tuned. Without that, the AI model will typically learn to make an inference about what it's been taught, but it won't actually give you the latest data.
Yeah, and the citations, I think the citations are really important. So am I right in thinking that Perplexity, which we talked about a lot in the podcast, that is a type of RAG, is it? That uses RAG
yes.
Technology? Yeah.
Chat-based, Perplexity, a lot of these technologies which tap into different data sources, it's retrieving information and giving that to you within a richer context.
Okay. And it's really interesting because, you know, it kind of gets rid of a big issue that a lot of people face when they're using large language models, which is all around that, well, it hallucinates, it makes things up, it doesn't provide citations. So this is kind of combining search and LLMs in one, effectively, isn't it?
Yeah, and if done well, it prevents hallucinations. So you'd like to get better, more reliable outputs.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. Well, I just wanted to start with that, and people can read more about it in the newsletter. But let's move to the first thing we wanted to cover. I think you wanted to have a look at the charts of the week that we provided, Yoshi.
Yeah, so I found this chart of the week particularly interesting. So this is looking at Gen AI as the top driver of modernization in 2024. Mm-hmm. Now, it goes through different stages of maturity, I would say, and it looks at the uptake of primary cloud platforms using Gen AI for data cleaning and also using Gen AI for automation. Now,
so when you say levels of maturity, whose level of maturity? Can I just start with? Is that the?
I would say it's typically, it looks like it's pertaining to a business.
Yeah, so organizations.
In this instance.
Yeah.
Yeah, an organization. So the different levels are chaos, order, insight, and innovation. Now, in the chaos phase, what this research is looking at is saying that people are typically using generative AI for data cleaning and automation, but they're also using it for a lot of other use cases. That's because it's new, right? So the ChatGPT revolution and everything that came out, it was a hot trend. It was more than a trend, but everyone's using it.
Yeah.
But when it turns to primary cloud platforms, no one really knows what that is, but they're interlinked to some extent.
So what's a primary cloud platform, just for the sake of the listeners?
So this is like Amazon Web Services, Microsoft Azure, and it's a cloud platform which allows you to do a lot of processing within the cloud, not within your device, effectively. And there's many different sort of types of processes that you can run, so storage, running machine learning models, etc., etc. Now, when you're using ChatGPT and these other tools, you're effectively connecting into OpenAI's cloud, right? That's how it works.
Yeah.
But when you're starting to use some of these tools, you're using it for different use cases. But over time, you'll start to recognize, okay, if I want to elevate my AI capability, I'll need to have some form of primary cloud platform. So when you look at this graphic, it goes into all three increases. And once you get to insight and innovation, it increases massively. And the reason for that is because you understand, okay, I know how to use AI, but I want to enhance my capability, so I have to have a primary cloud platform. But then when you look at in the last stage, which is innovation, Gen AI is actually used for data cleaning. And that then is a positive feedback loop between the primary cloud platform and using Gen AI to clean your data to get better outputs.
So it's like it's a virtuous circle. It's basically a virtuous circle. You move from chaos to order by bringing some kind of primary cloud platform, and then eventually you move to that innovation phase where you can effectively provide even more clean data to keep training the models, etc., etc.
Exactly that.
Yeah. So what would your advice be for a lot of organisations, and I would imagine a lot of SMEs and smaller organisations listening to this will be in the chaos, very much stuck in the chaos phase. So what do people have to do to get out of that chaos? Because what it says at the moment is when you're in the chaos phase, you're spending a very small amount of your time on that primary cloud platform, but you're doing a lot of work on the data cleaning and trying to get your data into some kind of order. Is there some kind of advice to those organisations stuck in that point to move from chaos to order as quickly as possible?
Yes. The most obvious thing would just be to try it out and see what works for you, see what sort of outputs you're getting, seeing if AI models are effectively working. But what I would say is to turn to what the industries are releasing. So we're going to cover this to some extent today, but the CIOB report looks at demystifying what AI models are, machine learning is, and it will help you understand a bit more about what you can do with AI and how you can achieve it within your own context, within construction, in this instance.
Yeah,
I think it's a mix of your own development and learning and just trying things out, so being prompt-led, but also turning to what industries are reporting.
Yeah. So I think a lot of people, they probably feel quite overwhelmed at that chaos stage. But the message is actually a lot of these AI tools will help you get out of that chaos stage because they can help with that data cleaning and automation. And it's well worth having a look at the graph that people listening in on the newsletter, because it really shows it quite nicely about how you move from spending very little amount of your time on your platform to spending quite a lot of your time on your platform, and it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. You keep getting better and better, and then your whole modernization sort of workload goes up to quite a high percentage. So yeah, I thought it was
the more you know, the more you learn, the more likely you are to want to use it, the more curious you become.
Yeah, exactly. So I think the message is take your first step. Like, lots of people will be in chaos, that's undoubtedly. And I'm guessing there'll be different definitions of chaos as well. But, it feels quite overwhelming, but, you don't need to solve everything in one day. Rome wasn't built in a day. It's a case of getting stuck in, trying to experiment with some of these tools and getting your data in some kind of order so that you can get to the point you can start thinking about a primary cloud platform. Cool. Okay, well, well worth checking that out a bit further in the newsletter. What was the next story you wanted to have a look at?
This was the release of Claude 3.5 Sonnet from Anthropic.
Yeah. I mean, this is every week we seem to have another battle in the arms race, the AI arms race, where someone tries to outdo each other. And now Claude, and for those who don't know Claude is just another large language model similar to ChatGPT. It's built by a company called Anthropic, who are heavily funded, I believe, by Amazon. Is that right, Yoshi? They're quite Amazon leaning quite heavily to them, I believe.
They are, and their founders were once with OpenAI when that was initially started.
So they released their latest version. It's Claude 3.5 Sonnet, and a lot of the tests are saying that it's better than GPT 4.0, which is the latest OpenAI model. And some of the things that it's got, it's saying it's setting new industry benchmarks, and it's talking that it's getting up to graduate level reasoning. So if we imagine when we started using ChatGPT, sort of GPT-3, it was like a toddler. We're moving up very, very closely now to graduate level, undergraduate level reasoning, undergraduate level knowledge and coding. I think each model's got pros and cons. So whilst that's better at this reasoning, some are saying that GPT is still better for most tasks except coding. So they're starting to branch out into areas that they're better at. But I also thought it was quite interesting that it's twice as fast as its predecessor. So remember, this is 3.5. The last version was Claude 3, and it's significantly cheaper to run. What does that mean? Why is it cheaper to run?
It's a good question. I think in terms of how its processing runs, how the AI compute works, it's a lot more efficient. I mean, that's the aim of the game, right? Is to squeeze as much output you can from a smaller model, effectively.
Yeah. I mean, it's what people need to understand is that these models cost absolutely millions to build. So a lot of these companies are looking at not just improving the output, but trying to reduce the size of them and reduce the compute, what they call the compute, so that they can run cheaper as well. And then it's got a few new features. Do you want to just tell us about the new features it has?
Yeah, so one feature that I like called Artifact.
Yeah.
And just to give you some context, when you're using ChatGPT or even something like Midjourney, you will provide a prompt and you will get an output. Now, you only start to make sense of the output once it happens.
Mm-hmm.
Now, with Claude Artifacts, you can create interactive applications and you can preview what you've prompted in real time. It's a bit like ChatGPT's interactive tables, effectively. Yeah. Is you have a preview window where you can start to see the outputs in real time and interact with them. Mm-hmm. To an extent where you can build front-end applications as well. The applications that you get from Claude Sonnet 3.5 at the moment, it's short-lived. It's got short memory windows, but you're now able to see what you're developing in real time, so you can make finer changes within your prompts, within your questioning. Yeah.
So for those, it's like almost a Power BI dashboard for those who have used that in real time. So as you start changing some of the inputs, it's really cool. And then the other thing I noticed, we didn't include this in the newsletter, but I just came across it today when I was playing around with it. It's got something called projects. Did you ever look at this, Yoshi? Projects?
No.
So it allows you to create a project that you might be, let's say, a home renovation, that you can put all of your prompts within and all of your conversations. So it's a way of kind of organizing. I haven't had a huge amount of time to play with it yet, but it looks like quite a cool feature. So
yeah, but the thing is with this release, people seem to be so concerned with looking at what's the best model at the moment. Mm-hmm. When in actual fact, with some of these frontier models, there's marginal differences, and the experience you have with them is subjective. Yeah. So, for instance, there's a thing called LMSys, which is a website where you can compare different models, AI models, Gen AI models. Yeah. And within that, GPT-4.0 is still the leader, it's still the leading AI model at the moment in terms of many different tasks. And this was corroborated in this research that we mentioned in the newsletter. And they were looking at data abstraction, like you mentioned before, James. They were looking at legal contracts. And this is something that you can look within construction. Now, even though both models are the leading frontier models, the data mentioned that they only identified 60 to 80 data correctly, but neither excels in this task. So it shows you that it takes you a certain way, but it isn't exactly what you think it is in terms of higher, more complex tasks. And because of this, and because of the recent release, like when GPT-4.0 came out, people said, oh, this is great. A few months down the line, people are saying, oh, but it's lacking this, lacking that. GPT-4 Turbo was better. And we're getting the same thing with this. And I can guarantee you, the next couple of months, people are going to say, Claude Sonnet 3.5, have they stealth nerfed it? It's not as good as it used to be?
Yeah.
Is it struggling? So there's this level of recency bias that we have with some of these AI models. In actual fact, it's so marginal, your experience.
Well, this current wave,
Contingent on
until we get the next big wave, GPT-5, etc. I think you're right. It's a little bit of improvement, slight improvements there, which actually has a negative effect somewhere else. And as we said, they're trying to reduce the size of these models and the compute. So
yeah, and even when they do these testing, you have to remember these tests happen within a very controlled environment with very controlled independent variables. So you can question the external validity. So people would say, okay, within this specific arena where we're testing very certain parameters, this model is better. But then users who are actually using these models themselves in their daily work, they're finding things to be slightly different.
Yeah, no, I see what you mean. Just a question then. How do you, because, I think we're very much at the point that we use ChatGPT as the default. Like when people talk about LLMs, they use ChatGPT. It's almost becoming a verb in the same way that Googling did. So I think that's a lot of people's starting point. But do you move about from model to model, and what makes you move? What makes you decide to use Claude there, or OpenAI there, or Gemini there? Do you know, or do you not? Is it just you tend to stick to one?
I've never used Google Gemini.
No, see, that's getting a really bad rap, but it's meant to be particularly good. But it goes to show what the marketing's like.
Because as soon as you drop the ball in one release, it just makes everything. I can't trust it. But what I do, so I like using Claude. I actually use the Claude to power Perplexity. But when I use ChatGPT, I just use the Omni.
Yeah, I mean, my go-to tends to be ChatGPT, but what I find myself doing is when it doesn't quite give me what I want, or when it's down, because let's face it, it goes down every now and again. That's when I turn to Claude. But I'm the same. Gemini will be the last result, which is
it's
really,
all about the user experience, the interface to get familiar with.
Yeah, we're spoiled, aren't we? Right at this point where we're starting to moan about little tiny differences. That's where we've got to in the space of 18 months or so. Right. Just moving on then. Was there any of the quotes you want to cover, or did you want to jump into some of these reports that have been released over the course of last week?
I think we should jump into the reports.
Yeah.
And if we got time, see if we can jump into the use of human brains to actually power AI models.
Oh, right. Okay. Well, that was the title of the newsletter, so let's get there. But before that, and we don't have to spend too long on this, apart from just to reinforce that there's been a couple of big publications in the project delivery space this week. So the first one was one called AI in Construction Playbook, published by the CIOB, which is the Chartered Institute of Building. And, it's a lot of them aren't saying anything different to what has been said already. It's about how it can enhance what we do and it can enhance the job, but there's dangers and there's risks and there's opportunities, and basically saying the construction industry is now in the age of AI. But the fact that these organizations are releasing these reports en masse means it's massively in the public consciousness. So again, the link to these reports are in the newsletter. But the CIOB one's there. And then the other one, which I was lucky enough to feed into a little bit, and I went to the launch of it at Arup's offices a few weeks ago, was done by the London Property Alliance. And this is really interesting, this one, because it actually does some quantitative research and some surveys. So it was done by the London Property Alliance, the WPA Next Generation Committee. And
they're both really good reports. They're slightly different in terms of what they teach you.
Yeah.
I would say with the London Property Report, it's focused on quantitative data, people's perceptions, what they think is happening in the industry, the impact on jobs. But I think it shows you what people are thinking and how they're adopting their technology. Whereas with the CIOB AI Playbook, that's more of an educational piece focused on defining what AI models are, what machine learning models are, etc. So I think they're slightly different. But then when you take them together, they're very powerful reports.
Yeah, I mean, the London Property Alliance one I particularly liked. It's 6 key areas it kind of focuses, and nothing surprising to long-time listeners of the podcast, but, impact on jobs, data access, AI integration, we've got all these agents. How do we actually bring it in? Education and reskilling. There's a bit about sort of copyright and security, and of course the ethics and legalization and legal issues around it. So it's
one thing I saw in the report that I liked was actually a quote, I think, of Keir Regan Alexander, I think the principal at ArcaWorks.
Yeah.
And he said that, or they said that, my interpretation of technological advancement is we almost never use it to do less. We always use it to do more. We could have looked at the modern office in the 1970s that is about to fundamentally change with the invention of personal computing and say we should go down to a 3 or 4 day a week. But we didn't do that. We just did more.
Yeah.
We did more. I don't think AI will be any.
Yeah, this notion, it goes back to some of the conversations we've had before, like what Mr. Musk has been saying around going down to universal credit. The reality is human beings as a species will fill the space with more things to do. And and we'll become more productive because, you know, at the end of the day, that's what drives the economy. So
I've got to say goodbye to my 4-day working week.
Well, you know, let's see how it pans out. Some would say you're always on a 4-day working week, mate. But
what do you like about the CIOB playbook, though, James? I'll just cover this in a bit more detail.
Yeah. They
provide a horizon map of technology and the markets.
Mm-hmm.
So on one axis, it's a horizon map, and they've got on one axis technology, and it looks at different solutions from current to pioneering.
Mm-hmm.
And on the other axis, it's got markets, and it looks at the solutions in terms of what's established to what's emerging.
Yeah.
Now, I'll just list some of the things in each horizon. You tell me if you're surprised by any.
Yeah, go on.
So within Horizon 1, there's safety monitoring, predictive maintenance, project management and planning tools, automated equipment, and concept design rendering. So everything within that in Horizon 1.
Mm-hmm.
Horizon 2, we're starting to see AI contract reviews, like we mentioned. GPT-4 Omni and Claude Sonnet struggle with that.
Yeah.
AI BIM, Code and Regulation Compliance, and AI Sustainable Construction. And as you get to Horizon 3, we're now starting to see AI integrated design. I mentioned that in a really old podcast that we did. Automated 3D printing, smart infrastructure maintenance, and fully autonomous construction sites.
Yeah. Nothing surprises me there. I think that's exactly kind of the order that will go in. But it's not going to be a cut-off. It's not going to be like, oh, we've achieved Horizon 1 tick. They're going to merge into each other. And it's just going to be a continuous improvement until we get to that inevitable point, which is the AGI that we've talked about so much.
Exactly.
So I just before we go on, I know you're itching to get to your brains, your lab-made brains, so we will get there. But I just want to finish by reading the quote from a guy called Theo Blackwell, MBA, who's the Chief Digital Officer for London and the Greater London Authority in the London Property Alliance report. He writes, London and the built environment have much to gain from AI, supporting the capital in its acceleration and growth. Planning, in particular, has the potential to see the most opportunity from AI, which I thought was interesting, because we haven't touched on planning too much, and we probably need to. Because he says that's going to empower local authorities in the critical analysis of planning applications, releasing public sector resource, and assisting in the delivery of workplaces and the homes for the future. However, a coordinated approach between the public and private sector at this stage is critical in realising the potential over the coming years. And I think that's true. Planning is one of those areas that really could benefit because it is so resource heavy and it is so biased. Like there is no often rhyme or reason to how certain applications are granted, some aren't. So it stands a lot to gain. My question, I guess my fear is it's also probably going to be one of those areas that has the most resistance.
A lot of resistance, antiquated, and when you do use AI to deliver something, you have to deploy that at a national scale as well, I'd imagine.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's a lot of complexities to getting it through, and you can see the hesitance, like you said, the resistance is going to be built on that. It's going to turn into a grey swamp.
Yeah, I think we'll cover that more in another podcast. Right. I promise you.
Lecturers.
Yeah. Well, sometimes, I promise you we'll get to your brain. Talk about your brain, Yoshi.
So this is fascinating. Yeah. And the reason behind this is, and I'll just give some stats, okay? So there's this company called Final Spark.
Mm-hmm.
And they recognize the problem that we're going to be having with training and operating AI models. So with AI compute, it's very taxing. There's a lot of resources that go into it, and it has a vast carbon footprint.
Mm-hmm.
So what these guys have done is they've thought, okay, how can we still deliver and build our AI models whilst being a lot more efficient? So what they've done is they're actually taking the term, there's actually a specific term for it, and it's called wetware computing. And this is where an approach is to combine hardware, software, and biological components to develop AI. And by that, I mean they've actually developed brain organoids, so biological brain material in a lab. They then connect electrodes to your brain because it wants electrical activity.
To your brain or to this artificial brain?
To an artificial brain growing in the lab.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, so they're small brain organoids. They've attached an electrode to it, and then they will provide a stimulus. And you can look at that like a prompt in an AI model. Provide it a stimulus. And because of the way the brain works for this activity, it will provide a response which you can map out. You can then codify that, and then you can get a certain output of which a machine learning model can start to read. So when you provide another prompt or stimulus similar to a specific topic of some sort, you would expect that brain activity to increase in response to that, right? So you can associate behavior or the way the brain's currently working to a certain response. And they're using this to power the AI models. Now, in comparison, Final Sparks bioprocessors, what they've called it, which is the equivalent of silicon chips, are estimated to consume 1 million times less energy while providing comparable computing power.
1 million
Training
times
a
less.
model like GPT-3 consumes 6,000 times more energy than a European city uses in a year, highlighting the need for more efficient computing. Now, with this, they've not just built it, but you can actually use it. You can register and start to ask questions, and it's going to be providing responses powered by a brain.
So this could answer the question of this incredibly expensive ESG kind of cross issue that we have. But what when you say so, does it look like a brain? Is it like a brain in a jar? What does this thing?
They didn't give too much indication of that. It's not form of brain matter.
Yeah.
Because the brain works electrical activity, right? So it's polarization, and it provides a response, and you typically measure it through an EEG. And that's how they get in the response. They put in that coding through a machine learning model, and it encodes it and understands it. So you can see how it's reacting to certain stimuli, of which we would call a prompt and an output.
Wow. Okay. So
it's fascinating, and you can pay to actually use it.
So that is live now, is
human
it?
brains.
Okay, and the link to that's all in the newsletter. I mean, it's so interesting to see the way things go. Like things like this come out of left field, and there's an issue, and you identify an issue with the ongoing AI growth, and then you get these kind of left field solutions. Some of them will go somewhere, some of them won't. But what I think
and there are also downfalls.
Sorry,
like for instance, these brains, they only live about 100 days or so.
Oh, okay.
Whereas if using silicon chips, it lasts a lot longer. So there is a need to improve the lifespan of these brains, and it opens up ethical questions, right? Because you might think that your thoughts are a manifestation of your brain. If we're using brain to power AI models, not can it think, but is there a certain level of processing of, I don't know, neo-cognitive functioning?
Well, they did say
when you're
all these
technologies, biological material in a lab, there's going to be variability in terms of what it looks like. Like humans, we have a lot of variability. Whereas when you're building an AI model using silicon chips, you can control a lot of variability.
It's very predictable. Yeah. So, I mean, it's interesting because I've always said that it's not just, you can't look at AI in isolation. There's all the other technologies, and biotechnology, nanotechnology, alongside AI. All these things will grow together, and they'll start solving some of the problems of each other's own field. And this is all in line with this cycle that I've talked about. We're coming to the end of the silicon chip cycle, which we've all lived through over the last sort of 50 years or whatever. And we're starting this AI. And it does feel like the silicon chips days are numbered to some extent. And there's going to be some kind of replacement to that. So it's a really interesting story. I think it's very early days yet. The thought of having a project manager as a brain in a jar next to me on a desk is quite, I don't know if that's a good thing or not. but they can't talk, which is probably quite.
I think it's so interesting. Honestly, I'm from neuroscience,
Yeah,
but I find
of
this
course.
fascinating.
Yeah, no, it really is. Yeah, so you can check out more. There's the link to the article that Yoshi was talking about there in the newsletter. Before we wrap up, I just want to talk about one last story. I mean, there's plenty more in the newsletter that you can go through, but the one I thought was fascinating. Did you see the Toys R Us commercial? So they partnered with OpenAI Sora to do a brand commercial, which is entirely generated by AI. Have you actually seen it?
Was it entirely generated by AI?
Yeah. Well, I believe it is.
When OpenAI did they did a release of that. Was it the balloon head?
Yeah.
I think they did with Sora, and people said that they actually used some editors to edit certain parts. And I thought there was some editing here.
There might be.
It looked really good, and it was quite nostalgic.
There might be some. I'm sure there's probably a little bit of work, but the way they market it is this is the first OpenAI Sora generated brand commercial, and it looks amazing. Like I played it to some people the other day when I was doing a workshop. They had no idea this was AI generated. So
the only things I would say are slightly off is when there's a slight change in expression, you can see like a bit of glittering.
Yeah, but you're looking for it. You know it's OpenAI, right?
I'm looking for it. Yeah, the locomotion of when they're walking, but it is really good, and it was quite emotionally thought-provoking. Yeah, when it was everywhere, it was exciting.
I'm not sure whether the music. Obviously, the music has quite a lot to do with the kind of emotional response. I'm not sure whether the music is AI generated or not. And like you said, I'm sure they've touched it up a bit, but it is studio quality, right? The vast majority of people would not look at that and say something looks odd there. And
the progression over the last year or so has been huge.
Yeah. So you've spotted something because you know what you're looking for. Similar to when you watch a movie and you know it's CGI, you come out moaning about the CGI. But if you didn't know it was CGI, you would never have known. So again, we've got the link to that in the newsletter. Check it out yourself. Let us know what you think. Drop us a line. Let us know whether you think it's rubbish. Maybe we're being a bit too kind to it. Maybe
we're biased.
Maybe. I mean, it's in the eye of the beholder, isn't it? When you're looking at anything which is creative, but to my eyes, it looks pretty good, and I think they've done a great job, like matching it with the music, and they've obviously done a little bit of editing. But this is where things are going, and for people in that field, if you have to create a commercial, why the hell are you going to spend hundreds of thousands of pounds on a commercial when you can literally get AI to create it for you? I don't know how much it costs. There'd probably be a bit of touch up, but probably for a fraction of that cost. So, and it's interesting from project perspectives because, whatever project you're working on, this is what's coming. This is what's coming to the world of projects and productivity in one way or another. It will get to some industries faster than others, but it's a sign of things to come. But listen, I think we'll close it there because we try and keep this kind of episode quite quick. In a couple of days' time, we've got a fantastic interview with Tom Haley from Quantic. So that's coming out in a few days' time, where we talk about how he thinks AI is going to change the world of quantity surveying in particular. But until then, we will wish you farewell. Yoshi, any final thoughts or comments before we close up for today?
No, I think it's fascinating stories around, and things are always developing. I mean, some of the stories are so left-winded. It's just
we hope we keep you entertained because we definitely keep ourselves entertained.
and do read the two reports because they're very different and they're excellent. And I read them both. Yeah, absolutely. And all the links are there in the newsletter, and we'll provide the links to the newsletter in the show notes. So until next time, guys. The next time I would have just come back from my holidays, so I may have to rely on you, Yoshi, to tell me what's going on because I'm going to try and turn off. I'm giving myself a no AI weekend away. So I've promised myself no AI. So we'll see how that goes. Are you going to drive there without the Google Maps? Well, see, that you've already ruined my plan because I do rely on Google Maps for everything. So that'll be the first thing. Let's see if I actually make it back in time for next week's episode. But assuming I do, we'll see you all next week.